How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brown Logan, and yes, we're still talking about net neutrality. It's still a very hot topic all over the internets, and you see what's going on here with this headline. California legislature plans to pass their own version, their own series of net neutrality rules, I suppose. I've not read this article, but it's really caught my eye because of this guy right here. You may recognize him. We'll talk about him in a little bit. Let's get into the article. California's Democrat-controlled legislature is again leading the so-called resistance to President Donald Trump, this time by planning to reinstate net neutrality rules repealed by FCC's Republican majority last Thursday. Now, this has been all over the news, all over the internet. People really disagree with me on this because I'm against net neutrality 100%. I'm glad that it got repealed. But people are really against me, and a lot of conservatives are against me. I really don't understand that point of view because this is a thing that has been mostly pushed by the Democrats. And you got to ask yourself, why are the Democrats pushing for this, but the Republicans are not? What is the reason? What purpose? We'll talk about that maybe a little bit later, but let's get back into the article. California State Senator Scott Wiener, Democrat, San Francisco, that's this guy right here. Now, if you don't recognize him, this is one of the guys that came out with legislation that says that transmitting HIV is no longer a felony if you know that you have it. So let's say you just happen to be some vindictive person. You just want to hurt people. You know you have HIV. So you go out there and have sex with people unprotected, knowing that you have the virus. See, in certain states, that's a felony conviction. Part of this guy's explanation behind reversing that was, oh, it's a stigma behind it. We don't want to criminalize people who have HIV, but it's like, yo, come on. All of that stuff about, the stigma and everything else is totally irrelevant when you're out here endangering people intentionally with a deadly virus. And then some people said, well, oh, it's no longer deadly. Well, maybe you die from it. Maybe you won't. If you have enough money to pay for the medication, maybe you won't die. If you don't, well, hey, it's a crapshoot. And just in case you don't recognize his face, I'll put a picture of him on the screen before you in post-production that'll pretty much let you know what's going on. But let's get back to the article. California State Senator Scott Wiener, Democrat, San Francisco, announced following the FCC's 3-2 repeal vote that he would introduce legislation early in 2018 to re-regulate internet providers under the so-called people power rules. Now, whatever that is, maybe we'll get to that at the end, but I'm not even going to get into that right now. But I will have this article in the description box below. Wiener told Bay Area public radio station KQED, "We don't think that the FCC has the power to stop states from enacting our own rules." Now, this is hilarious how the Democrats are all about states' rights all of a sudden. But then they say that the Confederate flag is racist because it was about states' rights. Then they talk about nationalism being the bad thing. We should have open borders and there shouldn't be any kind of differentiation from place to place. But now all of a sudden they champions of state rights. That's very interesting, but I digress. Back to his statement. He goes on to say, in fact, the FCC has lost that argument in court before, so we're going to move forward. California has significant ways of impacting internet access. We regulate cable franchises. Cable companies and telecommunication companies rely on access to the public right of way for the public infrastructure. So they're going to basically try to go in there and strong arm telecoms into doing what they want them to do. That's really unfair. And this is part of the reason why industry is beginning to leave California because of heavily restrictive legislation like this. And who is this guy, Scott Wiener? He's acting like he's the governor or the president of the United States. It's weird. Wiener knows that there are huge constitutional issues regarding a state attempting to preempt federal authority regarding interstate commerce, but he joined a long list of Democrats in California and other states that view dumping net neutrality as the crowning achievement of President Donald Trump's promise to reverse the progressives' 80-year expansion of government's reach through unelected bureaucratic rulemaking. As we should be trying to fight against that. That's why many of us voted for Donald Trump, to do exactly that, to fight against that. So shout out to Trump and shout out to the administration and shout out to my main man, Ajit Pai. Although progressives argue that net neutrality is essential to our 21st century democracy, and we need to ensure people can access websites and information freely and fairly, as Wiener put it in an essay posted at Medium, the net neutrality regulatory regimes Main achievement was banning internet providers from charging tolls on Google, Facebook, Apple, and other Silicon Valley tech giants, such as Netflix, that move massive content on the internet for free, while many of those same companies restricted conservative speech. Yes, it was funny. Shout out to Nuance, bro. He did a man on the street interview with a guy. I think the guy was in San Francisco protesting net neutrality being repealed. He was in favor of net neutrality. And the guy, Nuance Bro, was asking this person on the street that was protesting about net neutrality and what it's for. He was like, well, we don't want to have the ISPs regulating certain websites you can go to, all this, that, and the third, because you could be talking about a certain issue and you want your voice to get out there. And then they say you can no longer go to that website at all, or you got to pay. That's like restricting free speech. It's a First Amendment issue. But then the guy, Nuance Bro, asked the guy, well, what do you feel about companies like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, etc., that censor conservatives on a daily and consistent basis? All of a sudden, he became a conservative. He was like, well, that's their choice. It's a private company. They could do what they want. And then, of course, the final question, which is what I would have asked too, well, what happened to the whole First Amendment thing? What happened to freedom of speech and all this and that? That's when the dude just cut the discussion short because he knew he had him. At the end of the day, it's about just people trying to fight for what they want. It doesn't really matter about the rules. It doesn't matter like what they say that they're actually fighting for when they try to explain it. That doesn't matter. It's all about what they want. Okay. They don't want to pay more for their Netflix. They don't want to have any kind of potential restrictions on the internet usage. But when it comes to anyone else having their internet access restricted as it relates to certain websites through the websites themselves, banning them, if they don't agree with their standpoint as a liberal, if they're a conservative, then all of a sudden, whatever. But I digress. Let's get back to the article. Declaration of how financially lucrative net neutrality rules were to Silicon Valley tech giants. They spent a record $139.5 million lobbying the Obama administration and the federal bureaucracy in the year leading up to the February 2015 approval of the net neutrality rules among party lines. Yes, this is what I said from the beginning. The telecom industry and the big companies that operate on telecom, such as your Facebook, Google, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, etc., both sides have lobbies. They have lobbyists, they have lawyers, they have everybody that's going to work in their favor to get them the best deal. Okay, so you got to ask yourself, what's the best situation for me? Is it I side with the telecoms or side with the big companies on the internet? As a consumer, that's your choice to make. But you got to make it in an informed way rather than listening to some of these YouTubers like Boogie2988, H3H3, Phil DeFranco, all good guys. They all mean well, but in reality, these guys are natural road scholars really going to understand technology and business. President Trump took a victory lap for slashing coercive red tape in a national televised address just hours after the FCC vote. Quote, one of the very first actions of my administration was to impose a 2-for-1 rule on new federal regulations. We ordered that for everyone. New regulation, 2 regulations must be eliminated. Yes. So each regulation that comes out, if you're going to add a new one, you got to get rid of 2 old ones because chances are the new regulation is going to address the older ones. And also, some of the regulations on the books are not necessary. They're just there. They're just unnecessary red tape. If you looked at them, if you just examine the books closely, I mean, first of all, regulations are stacks and stacks of books. I can't even get it in scale on this camera frame here. There's stacks and stacks of books. So you should be trying to reduce that as much as possible. Trump added that he was proud that his administration is ahead of its goal to dump regulatory tyranny by overturning 22 major regulations and halting 1,500 planned regulatory actions. Quote, we have a responsibility to push back and we're going to push back, unquote. Wiener told KQED. This is part of the resistance. In addition, Representative Anna Issue, Democrat, California, who represents part of Silicon Valley, issued a statement indicating that she would co-write an amicus brief for planned legislation by Santa Clara County and the attorneys general from several liberal states to halt the repeal of net neutrality. Okay, so she represents Silicon Valley. She probably has been put up to this by people that work there. I wouldn't be surprised if she was a lobbyist that just happened to put in office to do things just like this. California's progressives argue that unbridled competition will be financially detrimental to consumers. Oh, really? Is that so? So you got to just regulate the competition. You want to be the only competition. You want to be the only game in town. I guess you want to nationalize the ability to access the internet. Is that what you want? But to pass state net neutrality re-regulation, they will need to argue against history and economics to convince voters that President Reagan's 1982 deregulation of the AT&T monopoly, for example, did not lead to a spectacular fall in consumer communication costs and an even bigger boom in the proliferation of telecommunication services. Right. I mean, this is crazy, but you know what? I'm not surprised at my man, this dude, Scott Wiener, the guy that says, if you transmit HIV knowingly to your partner, that shouldn't be a felony. It's a misdemeanor because we're trying to get rid of this stigma and stuff like that. He's gay, of course, by the way. People like this, these are the people that I just don't like. You know, this guy right here is really behaving like he is the president of the United States. Like, I've seen him in the news a lot, not just for the HIV stuff, but for other things as well. These people over there in California in leadership roles, I ain't talking about the regular people, because there's a lot of people over there, a lot of great people that are stuck in that state or just happen to live there. Maybe they like where they live, maybe they don't, but the leadership over there is horrendous. And this guy, Scott Wiener, is the tip of the spear. In my humble opinion, Jerry Brown is like in the background. I barely hear from Jerry Brown, but I always see him. But I digress. I'm getting way off track here. This right here should prove to anybody that's for net neutrality that it's not a good thing. Why do you have this guy who also said that transmitting HIV to somebody intentionally is no longer a felony in California? Somebody that's all for sanctuary cities and everything else. Everything that we as conservatives are against, or at least me, I speak for myself, everything that I'm against, he is for. Net neutrality is one of them. Now, sometimes you have bipartisan issues, but this is not a bipartisan issue. Everybody that has come out against it publicly that I've been able to see has been on the left. And when I say against it, I mean against the repeal of it. Everybody that's in favor of it, as far as it getting onto the books, they're on the left. Anybody that is against net neutrality being on the books is on the right. Everyone that's in favor of it coming off the books is on the right. For the most part, when you're talking about politics, people that are actually in politics, like elected officials, non-elected officials, whatever the case may be. So, I mean, that's what's going on here. California, these people do not want the free market to thrive. What they want is communism at the end of the day. They want the state to control everything. They want the state to tell you how much internet you can get, when you can get it, how you're going to get it, your food, how much food you're going to eat, where you can live, can you smoke cigarette? Like, they want you to really just abide by their particular set of rules. They think it's good because the government knows best. These guys are educated. They know how to manage a country. But at the end of the day, people want their freedom and autonomy to do what they please within reason, of course. I'm not talking about just going out here and committing mass murder, but to have every aspect of your life micromanaged, I think is a little bit too much. But what do you think? Do you think that net neutrality is a good thing? And please explain to me why, and also explain to me why the people that are in favor of it, high-level positions that I've been able to see. If I'm wrong about my next statement, please let me know in the comments below. But everyone that I've seen is on the left. Those that want neutrality to go forward, those that are in favor of it, those who oppose Trump and occupy repeal of it. Now, YouTubers, these guys, like I said, H3, Ethan from H3H3, Boogie, Phil DeFranco, these guys, you're not going to go to for your hard-hitting political commentary, are you? When you turn on Phil DeFranco, you're going to potentially see just like the latest story that came in the news and his own personal take on it, or a YouTube drama story. And Boogie is more into gaming, and H3H3 is just kind of a silly person. Funny guy, but a silly person. So I want to take these guys' word for gospel. Look into some real politics. Look into what's going on. Ajit Pai wrote a letter about this earlier in the year. I suggest you go find it. If I could find it, I'll put it in the description box below. But it's a must read. It breaks down all of this whole situation here. Once you truly understand what net neutrality is all about, it's all about trying to control ISPs, to have them under the auspices of the government more than they are already, to try and tell them how much they're going to charge for their services at the detriment of you, the consumer, because at the end of the day, you got to pay the price in the end. Okay. if you really understood what was going on, then you would see why this situation right here is bad. But hey, I'm gonna take my word for it. Go to California, move there, and then see how their rules and regulations work. The sanctuary cities, just see how it works, and you tell me when you come back from that experience how it went. But what do you think? Do you think I'm on point here with my assertion? Do you think that this guy is a nut to try and talk about having your own net neutrality? Not just him, not just the guy on the screen, but other Democrats in California and other Democrats across the country who may want to copycat him and do the exact same thing he did. Are they in the right? Are they in the wrong? Am I wrong about net neutrality? Is it a good thing? Is it something that we really need in society? If that's your assertion, please explain to me why. I've not really had anybody to explain to me why net neutrality is a good thing that I did not have a great rebuttal for and pretty much squash the argument. But maybe, just maybe, you might be the one person in a million that can beat me in a debate. I doubt it. But whatever your comments are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.